Once again, the media wetting themselves with excitement over Trump's third indictment. The Orange Menace getting hit with 4 new charges from the special counsel, this time over questioning the outcome of the 2020 election. The case seems pretty flimsy, but the talking heads claim it's worse than Watergate, 9/11, and the Civil War combined.
It is one of, if not the most significant case in United States history.
9/11, 2001, Osama bin Laden and other terrorists hated our democracy, tried to destroy it. Donald Trump, just like those other threats to American democracy, tried to destroy our system.
This is the gravest political crime since secession.
And this has a chance of going to trial before the election, and that's exactly what Jack Smith did. He knows what he's doing, and he did it here.
This case can be tried before the election. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't.
The election will be simply about where will Trump serve his next term, in the White House or in the Big House.
Yeah, so they want to send Trump to the Big House before you voters even get the chance to send him back to the White House. Legal experts and Republicans argue this indictment is an attack on the First Amendment.
Political speech now has been criminalized. The First Amendment is under assault. It's under attack by the Biden administration.
You see a lot of deceitful conduct, but the problem I think Jack Smith has is that Congress has not enacted statutes that directly criminalize the behavior that Smith is talking about.
When I take a red pen through material that's protected by the First Amendment, it reduces much of this to a haiku.
And Republicans are blasting how Trump's new legal troubles are once again perfect timing for the Bidens. Notice the difference on how the media covers Joe's growing scandals.
You just can't equate these two things. I mean, you're talking about an encyclopedia of outrages and scandals against constitutional government versus what's, at best a comma or a footnote in the annals of American political history, because you're talking about the son of a president.
They talked basically every day. Sometimes Joe Biden would say hello to the people in the room if he popped in or on the phone or whatever.
A lot of these relationships operate in the gray areas intentionally, especially when you have somebody who is either related to a famous person or a powerful person or used to work for a powerful person. You want your clients to know that you can get them on the phone.
All right. So, Jesse, you listen to the journalists, and they're relying on all this hyperbole. I have a theory that they use that to cover up their betrayal of speech and thought. Like, they can't say that it's about what Trump said or what he thought. So they have to compare him to a terrorist. So that way they can then just crap all over the First Amendment.
And their job's predicated on the First Amendment.
Yeah.
And they still don't want to defend the First Amendment. More people know about the Barbie movie than they know about January 6th. To Democrats, January 6th is like July 4th. To everybody else, it's just another day on the calendar. And if you talk to survivors or families of 9/11, of Pearl Harbor, I don't think they're the same thing. Some of these charges, I love it. Conspiracy to defraud the government. Okay, well, what would you call Russia collusion? What would you call Hillary and the CIA knew that it was a lie, still pushed it anyway? Not only that, concocted fake emails to make a judge spy on the Trump campaign. They defrauded the FISA court. Also, the laptop cover-up with the FBI, that's a conspiracy to defraud. That denied people their voting rights. Or the CIA PSYOP they ran on the laptop a month before the election, coordinated with the Biden campaign, another conspiracy. So if you're going to charge garbage like this, everyone's going to be in prison. I love this part of the indictment when Jack Smith says, well, fact checkers said that there was no fraud. I don't think fact checkers have a great track record, so that's not even going to fly in court. Think about the margin of this election. There was 3 states, margin was razor thin, 42,000. You're saying Donald Trump was out of his mind to think he might be able to claw back half? That's what, 21? 21,000. That's all he needed to change out. And you're saying they're now going to put the 2020 election on trial. Donald Trump is chomping at the bit. He's going to call witnesses. He's got subpoena power. He's going to put Detroit, Philly, Vegas on the stand and make them defend the integrity of their voting process. The lawyer last night was on CNN, cleaned their clocks. The guy said, they're trying to speed this trial up. We need maybe 9 months to a year. This isn't getting done before the election. And anyway, it's going to get appealed, and it's going to go to SCOTUS, and SCOTUS is going to knock it down. What the Republicans need to do is time the impeachment, because that's the main draw. And if you put up impeachment with the Trump trials, I don't think the Democrats want to stomach that.
Jessica, on the point of timing, I thought it was really honest of you in the green room to say, wow, having this stuff come out right after the Archer revelations shows you how this political beast operates. You know, they got greedy and arrogant, and they went too far. How else can you explain why they would do it the day after? I couldn't believe you said that.
You always betray yourself because you go one step too far. Like maybe...
Like a Democrat?
Not at all. I think that the timing of this feels that way to people who think that Donald Trump is innocent of all of these things. But the fact of the matter is that there is such a litany of crimes that he has committed all over the country that it just adds up this way that you're going to have another indictment and then you're going to have another one. So carry on, Republicans, with your investigations of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And Jack Smith will continue his work in these grand juries, which, by the way, are not people who work at the DOJ. They're regular people, like in Florida and in D.C. and in New York, are turning these back. Yes.
D.C. and New York. That's how you win an election.
The idea that you can only get a fair trial if people have the same political beliefs as you is patently absurd. I mean, then it's just like, okay, Donald Trump can only go before white billionaire Republicans. So that's.
So I guess you don't need lawyers to look at juries then.
No, having biases and having innate characters. Anyway, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to derail me. So this isn't about the First Amendment. And Jack Smith was very careful to make sure that the way that this indictment was laid out made it so that speech continued to be protected. Donald Trump had every right to continue to say, this is fake, there's fraud, blah, blah, blah. What he didn't have a right to do was to act on it. And that's where the crimes were actually committed. So what is new in this indictment versus the January 6th committee work is Mike Pence is a big part of this. So he took copious notes through the entire process, which includes a conversation that he had with Donald Trump, where Donald Trump, after asking him to overturn the election, to not do his job in certifying it, he says to Mike Pence, you know, you're too honest. When someone says you're too honest, that means that you want them to do the dirty thing, that you want them to do the bad thing. I mean, then on page 15
you could disagree with that. You could disagree with that, but you don't arrest somebody over it.
But you can't disagree with the fact that he knew that he had lost the election because everyone in Christendom.
You're going to try to say that Donald Trump knew he lost.
There's no way.
They're going to try to prove that in court, Jessica. There's no way he's going to be proven that he knew he lost. He still thinks he's president.
Well, then the insanity defense is available. On page 15 of the indictment, for instance, they talk about what happened in Georgia. And co-conspirator number 2, who we know is Rudy Giuliani now, tells Donald Trump, the defendant, this is a fraudulent accusation at this point, and then he still went ahead and pushed it.
Maybe he disagreed.
That's an example.
So it's like the Russian collusion thing when Schiff goes in there and gets a briefing and then comes out and says
all
there's collusion.
I have heard from you is Hillary Clinton, Russia collusion. You cannot move on with your life. Move on. You got a new indictment.
Move on. This is a 2.5-year-old story.
No. It's not. There's new information. We didn't have anything from Mike Pence.
You could just
the
create
fake
new
electors scheme is
Not fake.
committing
They were
crimes.
Trump electors.
And also some of his strongest defenders, like Andy McCarthy, wrote this piece in the National Review, which got taken
Jessica,
apart.
I have 2 other people at the table.
I know, I'm so rude.
Speak.
I cut off everyone constantly. I don't know how anyone can deal with me.
All right. Apology accepted. Dana, is it normal to announce that you know what is in somebody's heads? This is what we're arguing about right now.
Right, so they're trying to get in the head. That's why I think it's so interesting, because you can think, and I do, that January 6th was horrendous, disgraceful, terrible behavior, wrong. And you could wonder, was there a crime committed? And then you can read this indictment like I did last night and say, wait, for all of the things that they're listing, I'm like, is that illegal? Like one of the things they said, he was trying to persuade Congress to change their position. Like, well, everyone has a right to try to persuade Congress.
Yeah.
You can disagree with how he did it. You can think it's abhorrent, but is it illegal? And the other thing is, like, I think about this, the other piece, which is, I can't remember which charge it is, but I guess the fraud piece. So George W. Bush in 2000 and 2004 dealt with Democrats who said he didn't win the election. Did anybody try to arrest them?
Yeah.
No, nobody
But they
did.
accepted the court rulings like normal human beings.
Well,
Yes, they did.
Okay, but the other thing is this. So Ruth Marcus is a columnist for the Washington Post, and she writes from the left. She's a lawyer, legal eagle. And I thought her column today was very interesting because basically she didn't think this case was a slam dunk. She said, I can see where he's coming from, and she does think that something needed to be done, but was this the best way? She just thinks that letting it go without any sort of consequences or punishment was wrong, but it didn't seem to me that there was consensus that this was some slam dunk case. Now, contrast that with the case about the documents, where it was like, whoa, this is actually pretty clear cut. There were a lot of Republican lawyers who were like, that doesn't look good for President Trump. This one, I feel like there's consensus saying, how can you actually criminalize these things that are thoughts? Like, he passionately, sincerely believes that he won the election.
Yeah.
How are you going to prove that he knew that that was wrong? Maybe they'll be able to convince people that when he tells Mike Pence, you're too honest, maybe that persuades a jury. But I think it's going to be a tough row to hoe, they say.
Watch your mouth, young lady. This is a family hour. Last word to you, Katie. I feel like if you're inside the story the way Jessica is, you don't get the story. But if you step outside your bubble...
I feel like you're rude.
If you get out of the story, you see kind of a political machine that this is what they do.
Yes. And people watch elections when they come up, and they see that Democrats before have suggested, not just on Capitol Hill, but in the states and very aggressively in the media, that George W. Bush was not legitimately elected in 2000, 2004. There are entire college courses about how he basically stole the election and had alternative electors should have been chosen, which they're now trying to criminalize as a result. In 2016, the same thing. You had a number of people saying that because Russia hacked the election, that alternative electors should be chosen on behalf of Hillary Clinton, and that it should not be accepted when it was supposed to be certified on January 6th of 2017. And Jamie Raskin, for example, who we heard from at the beginning of the block, Democrat, stood on the House floor and said that the election should not be certified. And yet here he is saying all these things about criminalizing this. Democrats better be careful what they wish for. They always go way too far. They push this for a short political gain, think that the ends justify the means, and then all of a sudden the rules are new. And then when Republicans want to play by the rules that they set, they have a problem with it. We have an election coming up called democracy. Democrats talk about it a lot. They could battle this out at the ballot box between probably President Donald Trump and Joe Biden and let it end there, but instead they're using the justice system to do it for them. There was a poll that came out in June of this year, and it was interesting. It's from Harvard-Harris. It said that 53% of Americans would be okay with the pardon for the documents case because they just want a truce, including 30% of Democrats. I think there are a lot of people who are very concerned about where this leads and whether it actually will tear down our institutions as a result of criminalizing basic things like free speech and debate about elections.
I don't want a truce, Katie.
I know you
I
don't.
want
I'm not
revenge.
That's what I think they're afraid of.
Yes.
Like using the Insurrection Act, which Trump's people wanted to do.
That includes you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.